Hey everyone, it's Mindrolling, and I am back, and back with, I'm sure to be a longer-term friend, but we're just meeting right now, Todd Fink, Michael Todd Fink, he goes by Todd.
That's right.
And he put together a really interesting book, actually, and I mean, there's a narrative in the book, but much of it, the guts of it, are poems that he created, that you created, and I was just saying to Todd, yeah, I'm a real poetry fan, and I was telling him how one of my favorite poets, of course, is Leonard Cohen. I talk about Leonard a lot on these podcasts, and we're both from Montreal, and you know who Leonard Cohen is, don't you?
I sure do, and I also appreciate some of the, the contemplative side behind his music and his philosophy.
Yeah, he was quite something.
Absolutely.
So, actually, Todd does a few different things. He writes and he helps people through therapy, and for until recently, because he took off some time to write this book called Losslessness, and we'll get into that. He played some really beautiful music, and I think we're going to post right at the end of the podcast. We'll tag on one of the songs that he's done. Yeah, but let's go way back. And how did this propensity for all sorts of creative outlets come to be? And more importantly, this is something I always ask people. How did you get to the point where you knew there was something else other than your mind and your neurotic tendencies and habitual patterns were maybe closer to who you really are? And how did you pursue that?
Appreciate that. Thank you, Raghu. Thank you. For making time to talk about this. I think of you as Raghu Baba because you're like an elder to me. I see the picture of Ram Dass behind you, and I remember as a young man the book Journey to Awakening, seeing the book Miracle of Love, and that had a huge influence on me. So you and your friends, people who came before me to adventure into contemplation and into the mind, that planted a big seed in me. So I would say, to answer a couple of your questions, started with my parents. My parents were very open-minded and curious. My dad was something of a polymath. He was in the Navy, then he became an engineer. He also worked in hospitals, played music all the time, taught me how to play guitar when I was about 5 years old.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He was, I think, a very good picture of masculinity for me because he was very strong, very good with his hands. But I would see him sometimes drop everything in his life, like with work and everything, to write a book of poetry. Probably when I was 15 years old, he was like, son, I need to do this. I've set us up so I could take some time. It really gave me the courage to be artistic. And so, you mentioned writing and music. I kind of see it all as one stream. I'm just trying to understand myself and serve. And sometimes it comes out in song, and sometimes it comes out in words alone. I kind of think of this book Losslessness as more songs, just without the instruments. Mm-hmm. So it's very liberating, actually, to not have the constraints of rhyming and music and melody and all that. But it has the poems you mentioned. They do have the feel of songs that maybe didn't quite fit with the Giving Tree Band. And as I got a little older, I came across books like I mentioned, Journey to Awakening, and it inspired my own search in India and to find a teacher as well. And I got involved in the Kriya Yoga tradition about 20 some years ago. Started meditating sincerely, and I kind of see art, science, and spirituality as like three streams or three weaves that really are getting at the same thing. I don't see them as opposed to each other because when I'm doing music, I'm really trying to understand the nature of things, the vibration of life, the rhythm of life. And so all of that was kind of growing in the background, Raghu, while I was doing work and doing music and touring, these ideas were continuing to bubble up, and it took me many years, but I'm so glad that I've finally been able to push out this book and have one more piece to the collection of offerings. And it's really just about continuing to be creative. I don't even think of myself as a musician or an author. I just think of myself as somebody that's on a journey. And like you're sharing, and I just want to
Mm-hmm.
keep sharing
Mm.
and celebrating community along the way. So thank you.
Yeah, you're so lucky though. You had a father like that, and I'm sure your mom was pretty cool as
Absolutely.
well. And and they just led you. They just took your hand, and you walked on the path that was set out. Right? That's pretty amazing.
I couldn't have said it better, Raghu. I mean, my mom is so loving, so compassionate, so serving. She welcomed philosophical inquiry when I was little. They didn't. They didn't really like give me answers. They inspired searching. I
Mm.
mean, it was like the religion of the home was seeking. There were all these books of philosophy, and even when I was still a kid, I had already read like the Bhagavad Gita and
Oh yeah.
Hindu text and Buddhist
Mm.
texts. There
Mm.
was a book about the paranormal on our bookshelf. Only later did I realize what you're saying. As I went more into music, I realized what an uphill battle it was for some of my friends who were more talented than me, but their families didn't really have that openness to the arts, or didn't see it as a serious pursuit. And I just realized, how special that was and what a privilege it was to have the parents that I have. They were very young. I don't know if that made a difference, but
Oh.
my parents were barely 20 when I was born. So I
Oh
think
really? Oh, that's cool.
I think that maybe gave them a certain amount of humility. Like we barely know what we're doing, son. Um,
Hmm.
so we love you though, and
Hmm.
we're growing and changing together. But it did foster, a good sense of curiosity throughout my youth,
Hmm.
which led to some world travel. I spent time studying philosophy, not just at Georgetown when I was a student there or Columbia, but it took me to Dublin and I spent time with philosophers there, and then really got deep into mysticism in India and Eastern India near the holy city of Puri,
Hmm.
studying with my guru who introduced he was a great conduit for some of the deepest aspects of India because he could introduce me to saints and mystics, and so I packed so much experience into probably several months from 2005 to 2006. And this book is also kind of a celebration or a tribute to my mentors and to my primary spiritual guide, but all the people and even the teachers that you've been associated with that inspired me. I want to celebrate all that, and so
Hmm.
I mention a lot of that in the prologue of the book as well.
Hmm. What is your teacher's name? It's in the book, but I can't.
Paramahamsa Pragyananandaji. And you may know with some of the swamis, they have Ananda at the end. Ananda
Uh-huh.
means bliss. In
Hmm.
this case, the bliss of wisdom, pragyana. You're probably familiar with jnana, the path of jnana in the Hindu arts like bhakti
Hmm.
or Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga. But yeah, his name is Bliss of Wisdom. Very, just such a loving person. And when I was living with him in India, I just got to see all different sides of a teacher, and I think it is important to get to know somebody on a deeper level or to be around them in a lot of different contexts before students going to really make sacrifices and follow and put their teachings into practice. And fortunately, I had that opportunity to be around my teacher for many months in a row, day and night, and in
Hmm.
different settings. Something else that I think was really special during my closer time with him was how he carefully helped me learn how to read and write Sanskrit. That being one of the
Oh, really? Wow.
ancient languages,
Yeah.
it really opened up meditation, japa, things like that for me. and allowed me to read some of the yogic texts just in Sanskrit and try to contemplate it that way. For some reason, it wasn't as hard as I was thinking it would be, because it makes a lot of sense. There are 50 letters and they don't bend the rules so much like English does. After learning that, I had a lot of sympathy for people who learn English as a second language, right? It's just like, who knows what a letter is going to do? Who knows
Yeah, right.
what could be a verb or not, in our language. So this has a lot more structure to it, and a lot more rules that don't get broken. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks,
there,
Raghu.
there was one of our mentors. His name is K.C. Tiwari, who was extremely close for decades with Neem Karoli Baba, and he was one of Neem Karoli Baba's prime examples. He would look at him and he would go in samadhi. No
Oh my
breath,
gosh.
no pulse, no nothing. And this would happen a lot, And even after Maharaj-ji left, it would happen. And one of his he was a major Shiva and Mother devotee. I'm only remembering this because you're talking about Sanskrit. He knew these prayers and it's musical. It's not
Sure.
just being able to, learn it that way
Right.
by rote. You have to have the inflections and the rhythmic patterns and so on. And I never heard anyone like him, not a pundit, not any of these guys in India that their whole lives are dedicated to. He was the headmaster of a private boys' school in Nainital up in the Himalayan foothills. And when we did a movie about him and actually recorded, we had film of him doing these Sanskrit, prayers of invoking Mother or Shiva. And they actually came, which was unusual for us. I mean, say the very least. And that, but out of everything, and by the way, your teacher, I believe his guru is Hariharananda. Is that
That is
correct?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, the only time I was ever involved with that particular practice was through Hariharananda, like a long time ago in Santa Barbara.
Oh, wow.
He came and he gave a weekend seminar, on the practice. So I thought, wow, that reminds me of him.
That's really special. I'd come to this practice probably less than a year after his Mahasamadhi, after his passing.
Yeah. But out of all of it, all of everything that you've mentioned and run through your history a little bit, it's your mother that is the most important, I think. I mean, your father was great and everything he led you to, music and poetry and all, but it's what His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has repeatedly said to people, especially when they say, what is going to happen with our world? There's so much tension and anxiety and people really caught in fear or aggression or whatever. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, has said many, many different times, as I've mentioned, that the key to us going forward in this world that is so difficult right now is a compassionate mother. He said, you see me, and, a very compassionate human being, a monk. This comes from my mother. My mother transferred this to me. If mothers embody this kind of compassion, it will go generation to generation and you're proving this out. Your mother gave you that, transferred that, and now your whole perspective is one of sharing and helping and being there for people and so on. So yeah, out of all of these experiences you had, that stands out the most, actually.
I think that's I think that's right on, Raghu. And my mother is my first teacher in the practice of compassion. I don't know if I'll ever be as good at it as her, but another interesting thing with what you said, when I came to the practice of Kriya Yoga and meditation, my Guruji had me train with a woman who lived in a home outside Chicago for several months before spending time with him. And so my introduction to serious meditation was through a really special mother, Durga, Yogacharya Durga. And so I would say, I do feel like I'm in tune with that side of the path. And even in my academic life, when I went to grad school at Columbia, I partly sought this out, but it also kind of played out that way, where most of my closest mentors and academic advisors were women, and a diverse group of women scholars. So I am so grateful for that, because I couldn't agree more. It also just so happened that one of my introductions to Eastern philosophy was His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I somehow ended up at a retreat on his before I really even knew who he was. I was like 18 years old, I think, at Georgetown.
Really?
And my friend had a girlfriend at American University, and she invited us to this weekend retreat where he was there. And I was just enthralled. I think this lit a fire. As I got to know him a little bit more, what really resonated with me was, okay, here's a man, and from what I can tell, he's lost like everything someone can lose, complete identity, way of life stripped from him. But I never felt that kind of happiness exuding from somebody. So it really shifted something in me, where it's like happiness, we're always conditioned to think it's something we got to go get, we got to go claim. But then that shifted things for me, because I realized, no, this is something deep within us. And that was the beginning of a mind shift, for sure, for me.
Reminds me of a story that I've told many times, but in this context, it begs retelling. I was in India with Neem Karoli Baba, and my father decided to come to India to see my brother and I. He's going to come over. I had a terrible relationship with my father, okay? The opposite of you. And, but it wasn't like I knew he loved us, but he was PTSD'd from the war and all that stuff. And anyhow, he came, and we're sitting there, and Maharaj-ji turns to him and says, "Oh, why did you, come to India?" Something. Well, I came to see how my sons were doing. Oof. And Maharaj-ji said, "Well, how are they doing?" And my father said, "Well, they seem to be happy." And Maharaj-ji said, "Happiness is everything." And of course, it was what I got out of it, and since then, contemplating it, is it has to include a certain kind of contentment and being with what is. That is part of the happiness, package, and so on. So I always remember that.
That's really sweet and powerful. And what a moment of presence for you, just given what, the intimate detail you shared. Thank you, Raghu. My parents also came to be around my teacher, probably for similar reasons. It's like, okay, what is our son giving so much time to here?
Yeah.
And now my whole family practices the same meditation, my brother and my parents. So I also see that as, a great gift from them, but also I think the grace of our teacher too makes moments like that possible, right? Because we really, just like I was saying with music, without your parents' blessing, in my experience with other people, it was really hard for them to feel at peace with what they were doing if they knew in the back of their mind their father didn't approve, for example.
Yeah.
It really is important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, so I was interested in who is this Dr. Pribram and his
Yeah,
holonomic theory. Okay. I'd never heard of anything like this, but I need you to tell us about it.
sure. He was my first psychology professor. I think I mentioned this in the book because when I look back at the inspiration that eventually brought me to this book, this was probably the most crucial turning point in my life. I was in the business school at Georgetown as a young man, just thinking this is probably a good path. That's how you make money and become successful. I wanted to help my parents, and so I just thought I need to be successful. They never put that pressure on me. I was just thinking of that myself. We come from very humble background. Like I said, my parents were barely 20 when I was born. Both of my parents had a lot of brothers and sisters. My dad had like 15 brothers and sisters. He was just a face in a crowd in his own family.
Holy jeez.
They had nothing when they started. We had nothing. We didn't have a home when I was little. So I'd wanted to do that for them, to be like materially successful, but I was unhappy because it just wasn't authentic to me. I really loved music. I wanted to study the mind. I wanted to be of service. One night I was at a talk with a mystic named Reverend Gaiman, a woman from up north New York. And we were in a big hall. Some friends brought me there, and she called out to me and told me that she had a message for me. She named the conflict that was only inside of me. The very next day, I was like, that's all I need. That was the psychic nudge I needed to change. I withdrew from the business school and reapplied to the arts and sciences. And Dr. Pribram from Stanford was visiting. And for all I knew at the time, that was the only class he was going to teach. It was way advanced. It was like a high-level cognitive science course. But I was like, I have to take it. I read about him. He had worked with David Bohm, who was a collaborator with Jiddu Krishnamurti on philosophical dialogues. He was a quantum physicist, a sort of heir to Einstein even. I was just like, I have to get associated with this. In those days, you just mail in the registration, and somehow it slipped past the registrar, and I came to the class. He was almost 80 at the time, long beard, long white hair. And he was like, you don't meet the prerequisites for this course. And I said, that may be, but I'm willing to fail out of this course just to be around you. Before I went in, I opened one of his books and read one sentence. It said, the neuron is the basic unit of computation in the brain. Then I closed the book and took a deep breath, started walking in, and there were clinicians going in. It was a seminar with grad students and clinicians and doctors and psychologists from the local medical center. And I was thinking, I'm way over my head, but whatever, let's do this. And so he said to me, well, I just can't let you take the course. You don't even have biology 101. You came from a business school. And I said, but I have the zeal for it. And he's like, all right, tell you what, if you can tell me the definition of a neuron, I'll let you take this course and I'll make the case to the registrar to keep you. That'll be a prerequisite. Well, that was the only thing I knew, right? Because I just read one sentence outside. So that was fate. That was an example of you take one step and the divine, takes 100 or whatever. This idea of the holonomic theory of the brain that he came to with collaborations with David Bohm, who had his theory of the implicate order, that every part, so-called part, contains the whole. That's what the implicate order means. And that's kind of what we're getting at in mysticism when we practice and you mentioned Nirvikalpa Samadhi, which I appreciate because I think sometimes in the West, we think of awakening in a really intellectual way. We almost don't have any other way to conceptualize it as Westerners. But something transformative beyond our mind, beyond time and space, happens when there's no pulse and no breath. It's not just like, oh, I think I get it, or I'm seeing through the bullshit. Or I'm seeing the game. That has value, right? But there's something more. And anyways, the holonomic theory is based on the concept of a hologram. And though I don't remember a lot of the mathematics and some of the other technical aspects of the theory or brain behavior and conscious experience from the cognitive science course, but I do remember this. Dr. Pribram had a projector and it was showing an image on the screen. He took the lens off and it turned into a blob of light that makes no sense or that wasn't coherent. But he put the lens in all different locations in the beam of light to reveal the whole image at different scales. So what that demonstrated to me and to the others was that every part of this light contains the whole.
Mm.
Then I started to contemplate this, not just in psychology and throughout my clinical practice, but in meditation and contemplation. You can see this both in time and space, and this is one of the premises behind losslessness. You take a branch of a tree and you put it upright, it's suddenly a baby tree. You take a rock from a mountain and you put it a certain way, it's a figurine mountain. If you could grab a piece of cloud, every wisp of a cloud is a whole cloud. Every night we die. Every night, every evening is a fall into winter. So I see it in time and I see it in space. I see it in psychology. My relationships, my life, my work, it's reflecting something from my childhood and in my clients. So it's a revelation that time isn't what we perceive it to be with our mind and with our brain. And even though things change, that's why on the cover of the book,
Yeah, show the book.
there's this is the hardcover. It just doesn't have any words because Mary, the cover artist, and myself, and my designer David, we thought that the cover is as much of a contemplation as the manuscript itself. But the idea is, even though the sun goes down, it's not actually gone. So it's an invitation to look at that, and that's what's continuously resonating with me. As somebody who cares about the mystical arts and science, I think that I couldn't have had a better introduction to psychology. He was very much open to Eastern philosophy, as David Bohm was in his collaborations with Jiddu Krishnamurti. And so that's informed a lot of both my art and practice, that there's room for both. There's room for being scientific, but I think something that we take for granted, or I should say the establishment takes for granted, that even though we know something about the breakthroughs of quantum physics and that the observer effect really overturns classical physics, we still live in a world where modern thinking wants reality to be what can exist independent of consciousness, independent of the mind. And that's what clinical trials mean. How can we set up an experiment where it doesn't matter that you're looking at it, that your mind is there, the observer is there.
Yeah.
So that's some of the inspiration, and the prologue of the book honors that memory. Mark Twain said the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. When I traced back this part of this short memoir in the book, I traced back to that night with Reverend Gaiman and that first day of class with Dr. Pribram, when he made it clear what some of his associations were. It was like my father giving me permission to be creative and always reminding me to follow my heart, or like Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, son. I feel like my first professor in the world of consciousness, in the study of psychology, gave me permission to be a contemplative.
Mm. Did you ever see him again after that?
I had not. We had wrote a few times, but he passed away probably 11 years ago, I think. And tragically, I missed reconnecting with him in person before he was no more. And that also inspired this part of the book too, because there were many things I didn't get to tell him about where my adventures led.
And you quote Terence McKenna. I think many of you listening know who Terence is. So important in the psychedelic revolution. Nothing lasts, but nothing is lost. That's a great quote from him.
I really love it.
Yeah. And so just about losslessness, then you say it's not a denial of loss in the relative sense, nor a dismissal of the real emotional impact of death and breakings, but a celebration of what light and love remain embedded in all things. Plotinus said, quote, "Beauty is the translucence of the eternal through matter."
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, just so talk about the guts of it, related to impermanence and the kinds of things that I'm very much familiar with around from the Tibetan Buddhist perspective, probably most. And you also said impermanence, rather than negating meaning, can undergird it. I think that's super important. Talk about that.
Thank you for those reflections, Raghu. Well, I mean, like from a music standpoint, you take a melody. A melody can only have meaning because each note in the sequence ends. If every note had to persist, we couldn't actually enjoy the melody. So it's this dance with impermanence that gives meaning. I mean, we're looking at a sunset, like on the cover of the book. If the sunset was a permanent fixture in the sky, it would have no meaning. It would lose its meaning. That things are ephemeral. It is why appreciation and presence matters. And that there is the sense of an I, the sense of an ego. That is sort of the precondition for relating, for relationships. Hariharanandaji used to say God was one, but he was alone. He was lonely, and he wanted to be many. It's sort of like how when people look in the mirror, they might smile. There's nobody else there, but there's a relationship to the reflection, to the image. So I think the problem is that the problem in the world and in ourselves arises from the illusion that the impermanent is permanent, because that's what leads to clinging and attachment, greed, fear. But when we accept impermanence, and I think many of the wisdom traditions teach this, when we accept impermanence, or you look deeply into anything, you realize there's nothing solid there. Alan Watts said something like, understanding this and accepting this in life is a paradox. It's like swimming. You float, or you enjoy being in the water when you fully accept that there's nothing solid to hold on to. There's no there. But if you stop grasping for something to hold on to where there isn't, there's nothing we can ever hang our head on and be like, there I am. That's what I am. And that's okay. Because then we can swim joyfully rather than thrashing, rather than, trying to keep something. You can't keep a cloud. It's sort of like that. You can't hold on to a rainbow. Those are clues. Those are clues that everything is impermanent. What I think we're seeing now, to take this, to scale this outward, Raghu, would be, with the technology and the artificial intelligence, it's disrupting norms and patterns. As a therapist, parents come to me, I don't, with anxiety about not knowing what to teach their children. I mean, my family for generations said, do this, and follow this. And they're like, I'm not sure that's good advice anymore. So one of the things we're experiencing is impermanence kind of on steroids. And it's scary for people when certain patterns can persist for some time. It gives us the illusion that things are stable. That's not me saying like, I feel one way or the other about the changes or what they mean. Just that the reality is that things don't last. Relationships don't last. The forms don't last. But I do think that wisdom and love are innate. Love feels like something we got to go out and find and then hold on to and protect. But really, as Rumi said, I think it's more about trying to deconstruct or take down the barriers that we build against it, and to realize love isn't what we get, or what we lost, but really that's what we are. And same with meditation. Meditation isn't something we do. Meditation is what we are. And when we sit or when we chant or when we pray, it gives us a chance to strip away the pretenses. And it could look different for different people. I mean, I think for someone, they need to get up and go walk around when everything in their body is saying, lay down or play a video game or something. It's sort of like Gurdjieff called it sacred friction, I think. We need to, irritate the status quo of the machine, of the mechanistic part of our life. Yeah.
Or the interior status quo.
The interior status quo.
Yeah,
Well said.
yeah, that's made up of, again, neurotic tendencies, habitual patterns, and believing in our stories and thoughts. So, yeah, that friction can help really break up all that solidity that we all are so deeply committed to in our lives.
That's it.
I like this. Well, since you're a Sanskrit scholar, I mean, I didn't know that. That's really amazing, Todd.
Maybe not a scholar, but
Can
proficient.
you read Sanskrit?
I do.
Okay. You count as a scholar, man. No. You talk about fearlessness. I mean, first you talk about fear, which is the antithesis of love, and emanating from projections and so on. I think everybody understands that.
Sure.
Fearlessness, though, and in that Sanskrit term, Abhaya, which that's something I have, I recognize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's worth just tearing that apart a little bit about what fearlessness really is and how that connects to us in a way that helps us transcend so much.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, Raghu. What I like about Sanskrit is how they use certain prefixes, like A is for negation, just like it is. We've borrowed that in English, like moral, amoral. Amoral would be negating morality. So, what's beautiful about this word Abhaya is that it implies that fearlessness comes after fear. You wouldn't remove fear if there wasn't fear. So it could have had a word without negation, like it's similar to like ahimsa. We lack compassion, or we have these codes, and we need to grow our compassion. Or we're obviously here because there's something we're meant to do on this planet. This planet must be some kind of school or place of lessons. But I like the idea of the word abhaya, meaning through practice or through contemplation, through self-inquiry, when we realize what we're not, fearlessness starts to be revealed. It's not acquired. And that A is very powerful because it means the shedding of the illusions. The powerful example in the Upanishads is the metaphor of the snake in the rope. Mm-hmm. So, like Abhaya, there's Maya, the veiling and projecting power that also, takes the form of a divine mother, or the Leela, the play. But in dim light, a person can perceive a rope or misconceive a rope as a snake. So Maya covers up what's really there. The person doesn't see reality, doesn't see the rope, and then projects. So it veils and projects. It projects something illusory, a snake. Then the person feels fear, but the fear isn't anchored in truth. And so that's, what a seeker maybe is trying to cutting through illusions about their identity, cutting through illusions about the conditioning. This isn't to say that fear as a reflex needs to be uprooted. And I think this is something that gets misconstrued, and I think even people with, deep experiences, deep mystical experiences, think that somehow their experience gives them some authority or convinces them that, with what you said, like with stories and stuff, that they're actually beyond fear. And then a spider jumps out and they jump back. Fear, I think, has a biological component as a reflex, but I'm talking about the construct of fear in this book as the attachment to the impermanent. Yeah. So if you're holding on to that which has to change, which has to be released, well, then naturally the root of fear then is attachment to what's an illusion. That doesn't mean that if we cut through that, we have to behave a certain way or everything has to change outwardly. And detachment doesn't mean that a person doesn't play sincerely. I think one area where there's some confusion is when a person realizes some non-attachment or experiments with non-attachment, they really think that means they don't have to be committed to anything or anyone. I don't think those two things go hand in hand. I think someone could be totally committed to their practice, to community, to service, knowing that it's temporary, knowing that it's impermanent, and not taking themselves too seriously in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's a very advanced state in my mind, to be able to realize impermanence, illusion, all of that. You've cut through that. And then, but you are still in the world, but not, the lotus in the mud, that whole analogy. But so here's something, another thing I've told a billion times, Todd, on this. Okay. I can't help it.
But I don't mind it.
I don't know. Maybe you've heard this story, and maybe not. But it fits in with what we're talking about, fearlessness. And it's told to me by Krishnadas, my good friend.
Who, Raghu?
Krishnadas.
Krishnadas. Oh,
yeah. You know who he is. The
beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was in Mumbai at one time with Neem Karoli, with Maharaj-ji. And was sitting around a hotel room, and suddenly Maharaj-ji, through a translator who was a devotee who spoke English perfectly, he said to Krishnadas, courage is everything. So when the translator translated that, and then he was a devotee, and he said to Maharaj-ji, that doesn't make sense. This is, this whole tradition, who you are, Bhakti Yoga, Guru's grace, all of that. He didn't say it in these words. It supersedes doing anything, having courage or anything. So he was like, come on, what are you talking about? Maharaj-ji looked back at Krishnadas, and he went again, courage is very important. And that, from that moment on, through his life, he would describe having that in his consciousness when things came up that were very difficult, and the potential of arousal of fear responses and major reactivities and so on and so forth, that thing would come up and would allow him to settle into a presence. And what Maharaj-ji said, that's what Maharaj, He's so great because it's not just bhakti yoga.
Yeah.
I mean, and people say bhakti it encompasses everything. It's the heart of everything. But he led us to Buddhism in different ways, particularly the Tibetans, and all of us have really far out stories about that. And it was about discriminating wisdom mixed with the opening of the heart. They're not separate. And you mentioned it yourself, love and wisdom, right? They're one thing.
Right. That's really the heart of the book. That love and wisdom are two sides of the truth.
Yeah. So we haven't even, we're getting close to the end here, got to mention, I said in the beginning, I love poetry. Here's one. I want to read it if you don't mind.
Oh, no, I don't mind. Thank you.
No? And it's called Trust, which is one of the biggest things that we bring up in all of our seminars and retreats and everything we do is around that. Trust is the access code at the gate of friendship. Consistency over time equals trust. Lies, even white lies, poison relationships, systems, and community. Trust begins within. Learn to trust yourself. Earn the trust of others by faithfully playing your part, however small it seems. Deliver your lines with sincerity, however few. And, it's a beautiful poem. And
thank you, Raghu.
It's the first thing that happened to me when I met Ram Dass was trust. Because he just created a space where I could just be myself. There was no judgment about anything. I didn't know anything from nothing, okay, except, oh, wow, this feels good, and that trust opened up an intuitive place for me inside myself that I knew this was the moment that I had been looking for, and there was nothing else going to come in my way to open myself more to what we would later on I might have called, true self, the Buddhists call. And that's trust is so highly important. No,
I love that, Raghu, because friendship, one word for friendship or friend in Sanskrit is bantuhu, which means bondage. Because friendship ordinarily comes with expectations, attachments. But real friendship, like you're describing, is about this deep trust where you get to be what you are. I don't think people really experience your love, by what you do, but it's more by what they can be with you.
Perfect, they said, yes.
And it's difficult to put into words. So, the trust that that manifests from the sincerity, and that takes courage, like you mentioned earlier. I love these stories. The story that you shared about Maharaj-ji. I collect these stories, I feel like, especially of him. They're just so beautiful. But no matter if it's a word, if it's a deed, courage is like, I know this might not be easy, but on the other side of this word or this practice is my authenticity, is wholeness. At the root of that, of the word courage is cor or corazón in Spanish, heart. So like you said, the wisdom in that.
Yeah.
I think part of what you're saying in underlining this poem about trust is, this is one of the kind of contaminants of the culture, that people have been conditioned to not trust people. I think that's why, people gain so much traction just by being unfiltered, even if they, have lousy intentions, because people are so used to being lied to, are so used to being deceived. on all different levels. That's why I mentioned white lies, because
Mm.
in our commercialized culture where like everything is trying to manipulate you, extract you, harvest your attention,
Mhm.
it's not like an overt lie, but we feel how much manipulation like makes everything move. And so therefore trust, even attention, like Simone Weil said, real attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity.
Oh God, I quote that all the time, and
I
I
love that.
always forget her name, Simone.
Simone Weil,
Simone. Oh
a
my
French
God,
mystic
I'm
and
good. Yeah,
author.
no, I know, and
Yeah, so
oh
thank you.
no, thanks for that. I'm gonna love to be
Right?
reminded by that. It's so true.
So
Just think
true.
of all the time you're with people,
Almost
and you,
prophetic impression, given that,
yeah,
whenever that was written by her 100 years ago or something,
yeah,
given
right.
how hard it is to get someone to, look up from their palm,
Yeah, right.
anyway.
Exactly. Okay, we have time. I want to just one last poem. And
Sure.
by the way, everybody, the other thing we're going to do is at the end of this podcast, where Todd's going to share a track from his music, and we're just going to go out on that track. And Todd's also going to give us connectivity to, of course, the book and be able to order it, but himself and what he's doing and music, all of it. So this is, we're going to close with this poem. I feel like we're in a bookstore doing a poetry reading now. Hiding in the heart. There is a creation myth in Hinduism of God longing to rest after manifesting the universe. He asked the celestial sage Narada to find a hiding place where no one would disturb him. First, Narada suggested heaven, but God was not convinced, knowing clever minds would find their way there. Next, Narada proposed the moon, but God refused again, knowing ambition would one day arrive. Finally, Narada offered the heart, and God agreed to dwell within, certain that no one would think to look there. This is a story about abiding peace. We search everywhere except our own center. Heaven represents peace in the future. The moon represents peace in achievement. To pine for peace is to hunt for gold at the rainbow's edge. A moving target that deepens the delusion of something missing somewhere across time and space. The heart is a sanctum at the still point of an endless seesaw, like the calm eye of a hurricane or the silent fulcrum of a lever. That's a great poem, man. I like that poem, Todd.
I like
Gee.
hearing you read it.
You did.
It really,
Uh,
yeah, deepens the experience for me to hear it in your voice. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for writing that. Never mind anything else. So great to have you here, Todd. Really wonderful. I really appreciate what you're doing, and podcasts are fantastic. You get suddenly
really
we have a
special.
friendship.
I'm so grateful. It's such a delight to be with you, Raghu, to finally meet you, spend some time with you. Yes, I hope it's the beginning of our friendship.
And
I look forward to
please
connecting more.
do go to the Taos Nimkaroli Baba Hanuman Temple, because I think you would really appreciate it. And
thank you. I'm familiar and can't wait.
Yeah. And everybody, this is Mindrolling. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/Mindrolling, and you will see in the show notes links to help you get a little bit more closer to Todd. And we will see you next week. Have a wonderful week, and thank you again, Todd.
Thank you, Raghu. Thank you, Raghu Baba, and everyone who helped make this possible.